Hello.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back.
Yeah, so another episode. This is kind of like a follow-up to our initial pool emergencies one, but this is more for a pool owner, right?
Yes.
And Mike.
So I am interested a little bit in all these chemistries. Listen, we deal with things, and quite often I'd like to know and understand how they work, because I feel like if we can understand how and why things work, when we arrive on scene to something, we get a little bit better idea of what's going on. And there's plenty of pool owners out there, right? I'm not a pool owner. All these chemicals don't really make much sense to me. So I'd like to get a little bit of an education in the process. So we now have two people who are kind of pool experts to school me in what the hell all this shit is doing, because honestly, it really makes no sense to me whatsoever. So Steve, to do one of our best instructors, by the way, we're talking about in-class training during the front read. One of the best instructors running around the nation is in front of us right now, and I'd like to give him lots of kudos for that.
Thank you. Good morning, guys. How's everybody doing?
Awesome. So Steve also has a background in pools. You did what, pool work?
So when I was in high school, I was a lifeguard at my local YMCA, and it always falls on the lifeguards to help take care of the swimming pool. Exactly. And we would do that dance every morning at our local.
It's like calisthenics.
And then subsequently, I worked for a lot of pool companies that ran summertime community pools for like townhouse and condominiums. And then, of course, growing up, I always had an above ground pool. So several different sizes, configurations, different chemical types, different chlorine feeders. And so I have a lot of different experience with different types of pool systems, which now has made me probably one of I have the best looking pool in my neighborhood by far.
Yes. So one of the things that when I got my pool is, if you go to the pool store and you're just one of those guys that just goes to the pool store and you blindly follow their advice, there are pretty much like 9, we'll call them dials, right? 9 different things that you need to control in order to have that perfect pool. And the problem is, if you go to the pool store, most of the stuff you're going to buy there is going to turn more than one dial. And so I didn't like that. I want to turn one dial, like if I want to move pH or alkalinity or whatever it is. So this episode is about turning one dial.
Right.
Get it all dialed in.
So you would put a chemical in, and multiple variables would change.
Right.
All right. So then we'll start off with one of my first questions, right? What is shock? Like, how does shock just differ from regular chlorine that I would put in the pool? And I know it's not chlorine. Don't fucking yell at me.
Right. Well, so when you're looking at your water disinfectants, so we're going to talk about the chlorine water disinfectants, whether you're using a sodium hypochlorite, which would be a liquid, which tends to drive your pH up, or the calcium hypochlorite, which is your solid, which is going to drive your pH down, especially if you're dealing with a stabilized like a chlor or a trichlor, because the stabilizer is cyanuric acid. That's also going to drive your pH down. Well, with your shock, when you're measuring your chlorine, you're measuring your free chlorine, which is the chlorine that's available in the water to actually oxidize and do stuff. Your combined chlorine, which has already done that, but it's still going to show up on the test. So it's actually chlorine that's in the pool, but it's not going to be able to do anything. And then your total chlorine, which is literally because it's already done what it's going to do. It's combined with something else
already. Yeah.
Right. And then your total chlorine is literally the sum of your free and your combined chlorine together. A lot of people will cheat and just do, okay, let me just take my total chlorine, and they wonder why their pool is still cloudy, is still growing algae, because if your total chlorine is mostly combined chlorine, you don't have that free available active chlorine.
Right. Okay.
The flip side is,
hold on. A question.
Yeah.
Sorry. So why even measure total chlorine? Right. If my total chlorine gives me a chunk of stuff that doesn't do anything for me, why even measure it to begin with? Why not just look at the available
It's like
chlorine?
it's like who's available for work and then who's working. Right? So if I don't have the total count, I don't know the ratio of what I have.
Can
And
you
also
get those people working? Like,
so, and that is a very good point. Your combined chlorine in time, when homeowners talk about my chlorines burning off, the ultraviolet rays in the sun can actually free the chlorine that is combined. So if you have a high level of combined chlorine, you get a sunny day, that chlorine can become free again. And then all of a sudden you've swung too far. Now you have too much free chlorine. You'll start bleaching bathing suits, damaging your wife's hair, and doing damage to the concrete or the vinyl pool liner, depending on whether you have an above ground or an in-ground pool.
okay. All right. So walk me through this. I have a tablet. I throw it in the pool. What is that? The calcium? That would be your calcium hypochlorite. Okay. Yep. So I've got the chlorine attached to the calcium molecule. We'll just make that simple. What is that? That is considered unavailable chlorine? So
that's going to free itself into the water and create free chlorine.
So that's free chlorine.
That's free chlorine. And then your gross, disgusting neighbor's kid who was blowing his nose in the pool, now that free chlorine is going to act like little Pac-Mans, and it's going to come eating all of those, that yuck in the pool, your dead skin cells is going to bond to that to oxidize it and burn it off. Until it's oxidized and burn that off, now that's become combined chlorine. It's doing what it's going to do. It's not available to do anything else.
Oh, so it's already in the process of doing something.
Exactly.
Correct.
Okay. So, and again, I do want to say this because Mike's going to ask us a series of those 9 controls. And they are done not just because they were alphabetical or we felt like doing it. There is an actual order to fixing your pool. Like when you start, the reason why we started with the shock and awe is because the shock is the first step. You got to get chlorine in there to start taking out those organics and et ceteras and start putting them into check. The second thing is you want to get into the pHs.
All right. So then that I know from hazmat, right? That's an acid and a base. What allows my pool? Where do I want my pool to be?
That's good.
So a lot of people have always thought that when they get into a pool and the pool is quote unquote stinging their eyes, it was the disinfectant. It was either the chlorine or the bromine. That's not the case. It's the pH was not balanced correctly and your water was too acidic or too alkaline. That's what actually causes the eye irritation in a swimming pool. So your ideal range is 7.2 to 7.8. Yep. And that also allows, when your pH is in the perfect range, for the chlorine to be most effective at doing its job.
Okay. So if I've got an acidic pool, I would then have to raise my pH. How would I go about doing that?
Okay. So there's 2 ways you can do this. We'll do the purist way, and then we'll do the pool store way. Okay. And if you're a purist, you can use something called borax. I'm forgetting. It doesn't really matter what the actual chemical is, but
it's used in laundry detergent.
It is, but without the detergent. You don't want the soap part of it. So the soap plus the borax equals borax they use in the laundry. This is just the borax. It's, and so that is a pure pH mover. If you go to the store, as Steve was saying, and you go, hey, listen, I need to bring up my pH, they're going to sell you something called soda ash. Right. And soda ash is going to raise the alkalinity, which is another word for the base of the pool. It's going to change it to more of a base. Now, when you add soda ash, as Steve said, it adds other things. It's going to turn not just the pH dial, it's going to turn the alkalinity dial as well. So downrange, like maybe step 3 or 4, we're going to be worrying about alkalinity, and you'd be like, perfect. It's pH right in the middle, and then you're going to get the alkalinity. You'd be like, crap, it's way out of alignment.
Hold on, wait a second, because now I'm a little bit confused. Isn't alkalinity pH like if I have an alkaline solution, I have more of a base? So the wording is explain to me the wording.
Okay, so there's hardness, there's alkalinity, there's pH. There's what are the other ones? Forgetting them. Alkalinity.
Your 3 chlorines.
Right. Your 3 chlorines and your CYA, which is also called stabilizer. Okay. Your alkalinity it's a buffer. That's what we can think about. It kind of is a buffer. pH can move rather quickly. And so
Gotcha.
the alkalinity, which let's just think of, baking soda is pretty much alkalinity. It slows the ship from moving very quickly.
Gotcha. So it is literally a buffer that is in the alkaline range to help keep it from becoming acidic.
Exactly. So pH unchecked will just go rampant left and right. But by throwing alkalinity in there, like sodium bicarbonate, which is baking soda, it slows that skewing.
Especially when you're doing things like, getting back to the first point, shock. The idea of shocking your pool is you're going from that 1 to 3 parts per million of ideal total chlorine to 5 or 6, but for a very short amount of time, maybe 6 hours, to rapidly burn off all the organics. That high jump in the chlorine, depending on whether you're using sodium hypochlorite or calcium, you're going to drive your pH way up. So if you pour a bunch of bleach in your pool, you'll shock your pool, you'll drive your pH way up, and now you need to adjust the pH back down. If you use a granular shock, you're going to bottom out your pH. Because it's the calcium, you're gonna have to drive your pH back up so that you get that nice reaction to your skin, and also allow too much shock one way or the other, depending on what you're using, is going to throw your pH rapidly off. A good strong alkalinity and the correct alkalinity baselines are going to keep that pH easier to control and not having those wild swings.
All right. So then what are some of the potential side effects in raising my pH? Like if I go too high, what could happen?
Okay. So if we use the soda ash, right? We use the pool store soda ash. It's almost like you're going to see this trend a lot. And this is what one of the most frustrating things for pool owners is. You're going to go to the store, you're going to get the solution. And then you come back to the store like, all these other things are screwed up. And they're like, here's a fix for that solution. It's like...
Or when you bring your sample of pool water in, and they go, okay, well, based on your 27,000 gallon pool, we need to put 15 pounds of alkalinity up, and then calcium hardness, and they want to sell you, and they're going to tell you then, put this in, wait 12 hours, put this in, wait 12 hours, and next you know, you're not swimming in your pool for the entire weekend because you're still balancing the water from there have been summers where I've had community pools. We've opened the weekend before Memorial Day. We weren't allowing clients in until 4th of July because we just could not get the water balanced.
Wow.
Right. So if you throw soda ash in from the pool store, it's going to raise the pH, but it's also going to significantly increase the total alkalinity. And now you got a high alkalinity, and it can make adjustments to the pH hard because it's a buffer. And it causes what they call scaling, which is going to be like that white film that's around the edge of the water line.
It also matters significantly what type of pool you have, like your construction material. Bob, I'm assuming you have an in-ground pool, so it's probably concrete or gunite?
Yes.
I've got an above-ground pool, so mine's aluminum with a vinyl liner. Too much alkalinity in Bob's pool, he just needs a hard bristle brush to rough the scaling off. Run a hard bristle brush on my vinyl liner, you destroy my pool. Right. Too much alkalinity in my pool has to be chemically treated, not mechanically treated. So all of these different pool chemistries based on what type of actual pool you have is a third dial, 10th dial, if you will, that needs to be turned.
But yeah, it's not as easy as it sounds. So again, we go to shock first, and then we're doing the pH. Now, we've only talked about going up.
So what about down? What is going to bring the pH more into the acid area?
All right, so let me talk about the pure dial move, which is going to be muriatic acid, which is brick cleaner. You can get this from Home Depot. And all that is hydrochloric acid, 37% concentration. It is a pure pH mover. It is going to move your pH down, a lower number. Now we go to the pool store and they say, oh, you need dry acid, which is sodium bisulfate. Okay. So what happens? Right. Steve, what happens when I add a dry acid to this pool?
So you add a dry acid, you're going to now lower your total alkalinity of the water. You're going to increase the corrosiveness, and then even though you've lowered the total alkalinity and you've effectively lowered the pH, it's going to be harder to climb it back out. The inner workings of all of your mechanical stuff, the pump shaft impeller, the pump impeller, the dendrites, the filter screens in your high rate sand filter are all now taking a beating because you are outside of that neutral. And when you're pumping water at a couple of 100 gallons per minute through your filter system with a lowered pH, you're actually damaging your mechanicals. We've had significant leaks in pump rooms to find out that the impeller housing has just rotted away from the inside because of a chronic low pH problem with a low alkalinity. And now you're spending could be potentially thousands to replace a filtration system.
So now I know there's people thinking, okay, so wait, if I go to an acidic side of the range, it is mechanically catastrophic, right? I mean, and I'm talking about it's significant in the long run. So if you had the ability of going one side or the other, you want to stay on the higher side. Mechanically, it's a much cheaper option, but it doesn't. You still want to be the 7.2 to 7.8. Once you get it in that sweet zone, things are going to start locking together, and you're going to start seeing that pool really fix itself. A lot of people try to go for this easy button, and they go with these flocculants and these clarifiers and stuff like that. If you do this right, you don't need that crap. You don't need it.
Even if you're opening your pool for the first time, then you got like this massively cloudy pool, like you're saying, just balance the pool, it will end up taking care of itself.
I'll tell you, I opened up this season. It was nice, but it wasn't great. I threw in 2 bottles of bleach, like pool bleach, which is I think 10%. It's a little stronger than the normal bleach you buy for your laundry. I dumped 2 of them in and ran the pump for like 3 days, nonstop. And by the end of the 3rd day, I just had to balance the pH and it was done. It's been perfect the whole time. This year I was lucky.
All right.
As a pool guy, I've always avoided the use of flocculants. All a flocculant is going to do is going to allow the materials, the solids, the particulates in suspension to kind of coalesce and now sink to the bottom. So now you've got a vacuum. And I'm not against vacuuming, but I have seen lifeguards, and even myself, I've tried to do it too quick. If you don't have great suction and you move that brush head too quick, you just resuspend everything in the water. You have to wait another 12 hours to settle back down. It could be days before your pool is swim worthy. If you chemically treat it, burn off all that organic, let the UV rays do their thing, let the chlorine do its thing. Like Bob said, your pool's beautiful in 3 days.
Okay. All right. So that's pH. What if I wanted to change the buffer? Right. What if I that buffer that you talked about, the alkalinity? If I wanted to raise the alkalinity or the buffer, what would the store do? How would that mess things up? And what is your precision method?
Okay, so if you're going to do alkalinity, and this is you go to Walmart and you can buy a 10-pound bag of Arm & Hammer baking soda. And you'll be like, why is this in the pool section? Because that is alkalinity raise up, right? And if you go to the pool store, it's just in a bucket with alkalinity up is the label of it. It's the same crap.
And it's a 20% markup.
Yeah, it's significantly cheaper. So sodium bicarb is going to primarily raise the alkalinity. Is it a pure mover? No, it's not a pure mover. It's also going to move your pH a little bit. Okay, just understand it's not going to be a lot, but it's going to move it a little bit. If you go to the pool store, they're going to give you either their alkalinity up, or they're going to say, well, put a little bit more soda ash, as we spoke about before, which is going to, yes, raise the pH. That's its primary moving, but it's also going to move the alkalinity.
So would you, if you had to really raise your pH and increase your alkalinity, would you do that pool store maneuver, or would you use your 2 separate individual chemicals?
I'll tell you what I would do. I would. All right. So if I had to move my alkalinity in a raising type thing, and I know it's going to change the pH a little bit, what I would do is I would use my alkalinity up, right? So it's going to raise the pH, and then I'm going to use a dash of muriatic acid, pure pH mover, to move it back. That's how I would do it.
Okay. Good signs.
What about you? Do you concur, Steve, or?
So having an above ground pool, it's slightly different I have the ability to have a little bit more control over how I'm moving things. I've got a whole other ball of wax that I contend with. Where I live up here in Orange County, I'm on a well. So I've got hard water as well as heavy water. So I've got minerals as well as metals in my water. So the last thing I ever want to do is have to put water into my pool. And for a lot of people, that's a great answer. Let me just take some water out, put some fresh tap water in. That usually has less chemicals. It's just easier to balance. If I do that, I throw the chemistry of my pool wildly off. And then I get the metals falling out of solution. I get copper staining. It's a whole big mess. If I had to move my alkalinity, I actually like the alkalinity up because if you do the calculations, the one good thing about pool chemicals from the pool store is there's a chart on the back, and if they're good quality chemicals, it's predictive. If you have if you put 1 pound of this in, it will raise the pH of 10,000 gallons by this 0.2 of a point on the scale, and it's predictable. So I just have to do the math: 27,000 gallons, so times 2.7, blah blah blah, and I could calculate how many pounds I need to throw in, and I'm usually right on the money. When you go and you get the baking soda bag, you're doing a lot of testing, and that a good testing kit goes a long way. I use the Taylor kit, which is liquid reagents. I do not use the dry tabs that you dip in the water like pH paper and wait for color change. I think those are garbage. But a good test kit, a real pool quality test kit, is about $250.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. All right. So that's for raising it. What if I want to lower it? What if I need to get rid of some alkalinity?
You have two different options. You can muriatic acid, which I said before, will drop it. But again, like Steve says, you have to kind of calculate these cross trajectories, if you would. But dry acid will drop your alkalinity, as we spoke about before. So the muriatic lowers both the alkalinity and the pH. So careful monitoring and adjustments are needed to do this thing. Lowering alkalinity, when you lower the alkalinity, you're making your pH fluctuations go faster. Everybody keeps
because
on
you're
that.
removing that buffer, so naturally you're going to have the swings because there's no buffer.
One of the most common ways to lower the total alkalinity is to now set your filter to backwash to waste and drop 6 inches out of the pool, add fresh water. That's the most common way in the industry, is just take water out, add water. That lowers your overall alkalinity. But as I said, a lot of people don't have that luxury. I can't do that because then if I'm putting well water back in my pool, that's a whole nother mess of issues. If I have to take water out, I'm never taking less than a foot of water out of my pool because I've got to call the local water company and they send me literally a 306 full of water, and a truckload of water costs what a truckload of water costs. I paid for a whole truck of water. I put a whole truck of water in.
Oh, I didn't even know you could order water by the truckload.
And that's the start of my pool season. My pool gets uncovered, and a local company delivers. It's an old 306 that no longer delivers hydrocarbons, and I get 6,000 gallons of water just to top off that 6,000 gallon drop. That's how I start every pool season. Can
you order that everywhere? Can we start doing offloading drills by having companies come with 306s of water?
I just stretch a line from the hydrant and I fill up.
Yeah.
So I don't have to pay
live on
for
the side of the mountain, Bob. I don't have a hydrant. But so an interesting thing. So Bob has that luxury that he could pump water out and just get hydrant water. But Bob having an in-ground pool, one of the things that's also worth talking about is your calcium hardness. Your water wants calcium no matter what. And if you don't put it in, it will literally take it from the pool,
from the concrete,
especially a concrete pool. So you'll get something called chalking, where all of a sudden the kids are like, "Daddy, why are my hands white?" Because as they touch the side of the pool, they're pulling the calcium, the waters pull the calcium through, and now there's a calcium powder coating on the side of the pool. it's not a big problem until you've done it so much that one day you open your pool and there's no water in it because the concrete got dried, cracked, and literally all your water just went into the ground.
All right, so now 2 more major dials we got to turn up or down.
Okay, that would be the CYA, the cover your ass.
Right. Cyanuric acid, which is, think about this as the chlorine's doing the organic oxidizing, the pH doing its thing, everything's in balance, but the UV from the sun is blasting the water. Right. And those chemical reactions that are happening inside the water are getting destroyed by just simple photons, UV radiation. Enter cyanuric acid. Cyanuric acid is the shield that lets the chlorine do its thing. Okay, so if you don't have CYA in the proper proportions in the pool, then I mean, I'm not joking. If you put in shock and you don't have CYA in there, within a couple of hours, you have no shock. It's gone.
Really?
Yes.
It's gone. Like if
all
you have
from the UV light.
If you have the proper amount of CYA in the water and you have shock in there, it can last weeks.
Which is usually why. So when you look at your chlorine-based pool cleaners, your hyperchlorite is usually not stabilized. Your calcium hyperchlorite usually is. Your shock isn't, because you want to raise your free chlorine temporarily to kill everything, but you want it to come back down. So you won't have stabilized shock. If you, and lots of people have done this because a pool store does sell both. You could go buy the 3-inch unstabilized pucks and wondering why you're throwing a puck in your pool every day for an above ground pool, and your chlorine is just, your chlorine, you know you're putting chlorine in, but you can never test for it. It's always showing you a 0.
That's really what he just said is very important. So I want to make sure everybody understands that there's a difference between shock and chlorine that you put in to keep it chlorinated. Shock is not stabilized, means I want to shock and awe this pool, destroy the oxidizers, and then I want the sun to take that out. Because if it comes with a stabilizer, it's going to stay up for a long time. And the problem, all right, so here's the thing. If I want to raise my CYA, I just got to put stabilizer in, and you can buy that isolated. But the problem is you put too much CYA in, there is no getting rid of it. You have to drain your pool.
So you can't lower it with.
You have to literally drain it to dilute out the system.
There's no neutralizer. So and that comes into when you really get to know your pool or your system. I worked at a very large community pool where in the beginning of the season we would run stabilized calcium hypochlorite. And then you get to a point where if you continue to put stabilized pucks in, you're driving your CYA, your cyanuric acid, continually up. So about mid-June to the beginning of July, we would transition to unstabilized chlorine because there was already enough stabilizer in there. And then you start to have the naturally occurring around mid-July, early August. The rain kind of stops, the humidity kind of wanes, and you get those high heat days where now your water's evaporating out. Now you're adding in fresh water. The water's evaporated out, but the cyanuric acid hasn't. So even though you're adding fresh water in, your cyanuric acid levels are still maintaining. But if you use cyanuric acid all summer long, by the end of the summer, you'll have so much stabilizer in your pool that now the chlorine almost doesn't work because it's not going anywhere. It doesn't even combine. And then cyanuric acid does something magical to metals. It'll cause the metals to fall out of solution. And now you get these random, they almost look like beautiful copper Rorschachs on the concrete or the liner of your pool. And you're like, when did a moose fall in my pool and die and stain the liner? Because I've seen them sometimes, they're huge. I had one a couple of years ago in my old pool before I had the liner replaced. And the guy came out and he goes, "Do you fill this with your well?" And I sheepishly said, "Well, no, I know not to do that." He goes, "Don't lie to me. Of course you did, because that's a copper stain and you got way too much cyanuric acid." So, yeah, I got caught.
Yeah. So, again, CYA is an important thing, but the last little tweak, and again, this is the least important tweak, but it is a part of the tweak, is going to be your hardness. Now, me, I get my stuff from a municipal system. I don't really have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with doing hardness. But Steve, you come from some place has well water, which is not every well, but most wells have a hardness issue.
Correct.
Right. So how do you balance that? Because I don't have a lot of experience with this one.
So I actually have, and this is one of those unique things, because I know about my pool and I also know about my residential water supply. I'm on a well and I have a very, very hard water issue as well as a heavy water issue. I have two spigots on my outside. One of them is straight from the well to the pump and then right back outside. That's just straight groundwater. I never put that in the pool because that has all the issues with the well still in the water. Then the water that comes to my house goes through my particulate filter, my chlorinator, and then my water softener. And then on the other side of that system, I have another spigot that comes out. If I need to put water in my pool because I'm so low I can't run the filter, it has to come from the treated spigot to adjust that hardness. Otherwise, my water will be so hard going in, and there's almost nothing you could do chemically to deal with hard water. And that's another reason why when I need the 6,000 gallons, because for an above ground pool, you drain every fall to below the skimmer and the return line so you don't create ice around your pool. So that now I've got to raise my pool about a foot every spring when I open. I'm not doing that on my well because I refuse to burn out my well just to top off the pool. That's why I call the water truck. If I need 2 to 4 inches, I can do that, but it has to come from the treated side of my water system. As you said, having a municipal water supply where they're already doing a lot of the water balancing at water treatment for you. So in that regard, you're blessed. And hard water for a swimming pool can actually damage the structure of the pool if you've got a concrete pool. It'll put minerals back into the concrete that'll break the concrete. If your calcium's off, it'll pull the concrete out. Not having a balanced water. And I've heard a lot of people say, well, do I need to take my water down to the pool store? You absolutely should, because they have the great systems to tell you what you need. That doesn't mean that you need to buy everything that they tell you should buy, but it's good to get the printout and see this is where my water is.
Their system to monitor and meter your water balance is insanely good, and it's a free resource. And they give you that free resource because they want you to buy their product. Now, you don't have to buy that product. Like Steve says, if you understand how to do this thing, it's pretty easy. If I want to raise the hardness, I use calcium chloride, which is just road salt. For those of you that work, live in the colder area, the stuff they put on the roads to de-ice a road is called calcium chloride. That is the stuff we would raise hardness with. But to lower the hardness, there's nothing to do but drain and refill your pool. So hopefully all you nerds out there got something out of this.
Well, I'll leave you with this. So after years of dealing with this as a lifeguard, as a pool operator, and as a residential pool owner, when I built my new pool 2 years ago, I said, I'm done with chemicals. And now I'm running an oxygen pool system where I have an ozone generator that is pumping pure ozone into my return line, purifying the water and eliminating my organics that way, with a once weekly copper sulfate treatment as my anti-algicide. So I do shock every spring when I open it, but it's an unstabilized shock just to give it that shock and awe, kill whatever may have moved in over the winter. And then I run my filter 12 hours a day. I'm pumping ozone in the return line. The water's never felt better. My wife's hair looks great. I haven't faded out a bathing suit. It's great for the baby. The downside is the initial cost for the system, but I'm never buying pool chemicals again.
That's different than the salt water.
Yes. This is still, so I've got regular fresh water, but I've got an ozone generator that's pumping ozone into the return line. So there's always a little bit of bubbles coming out of my pool return, and the ozone is doing a phenomenal job killing everything in the pool. I've yet to have any algae blooms in the 2 years I've been running this system.
Good to know for the future.